the job of mayor. It is a very difficult job, but we are at a point in our city right now where people I talk to, whether it's members of my own family or whether it's people around the city, who take a look at this mayor's race and they say, this is really going to be the determining factor on whether or not we are able to stay in the city of New Orleans. And when they tell me, they're like, Helena, you are the type of leader who we need, you know, that really means a lot. That means a lot. And I certainly feel the weight on my shoulders of the people of New Orleans putting that kind of trust in me. And I think what the people of New Orleans see in me, and I guess what resonates, is really my work ethic. I stop at nothing to get the job done. And honestly, that's what the city needs right now. People are looking around and saying, it's like, gosh, I just wish the basics worked in New Orleans. I wish that when I called 911, that an ambulance would get there, that a police officer would get there, that as I drive down the street, that the lights work, that as I drove down the street, I didn't bust up my car because the streets are such a mess. And so to get the city in the position where we need it to be, it's going to take a 24/7 mayor, a nonstop person, somebody working with urgency to get the job done. And so I'm excited about this. I know that this is really, you know, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon to get to Election Day, but I'm really excited about this, and I'm ready to go. My team is ready to go, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, fantastic.
Sure.
And Councilwoman, I would just like to ask, what would your plans be if you are elected in installing a police chief, and would you consider retaining Ann Kirkpatrick as the superintendent?
Well, I'll tell you this, making sure that our NOPD is a functioning, good department, stable department. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
You can start thinking about that.
Yeah. So, Mike, I'll say this. You know, obviously, it's incredibly important to have a top-notch New Orleans Police Department, and that means that we have to have a top-notch leader. It's going to be up to, you know, really Ann Kirkpatrick to let me know what she decides to do. I've had some conversations with her. I'm not going to share those private conversations that I've had with her. But I will say this. I also do believe that we have some incredibly competent leadership within our own NOPD, in which the chief right now is currently grooming to potentially become that next chief. So all of that will be determined at a later time. You know, we'll see what happens. But I do think that Chief Ann Kirkpatrick has certainly been doing a very formidable job. We've been seeing what's been happening with the crime stats. They've been going down. Obviously, we had a couple of terrible, horrific shootings recently happen, but overall, the statistics are going in the right direction. But, you know, all of that will be determined at a later date. I got to get elected first, Mike.
Now, if you were to become mayor, Donald Trump will be president at this time, and so will you cooperate with federal efforts to remove undocumented immigrants from New Orleans?
I'll say this. I mean, the city of New Orleans, when it comes to public safety, people are concerned about, you know, the level of violence that we have, gun violence, on whether their property is going to get stolen. You know, I was just over in New Orleans East and visiting a business there, and they were concerned about their equipment getting stolen. What's even worse is that earlier that day, I was reading at one of the schools in New Orleans East to a group of third graders. And when I was leaving that school at 9:30, all of these officers started rushing all around me because there was a shooting right across from the school. So that's what our NOPD needs to prioritize.
Somewhat along kind of similar lines to that question. I mean, if you were to win mayor, you would be working under a Republican governor, Republican supermajority in the state legislature. Yeah. How do you see kind of the role of mayor and that position being in a Helena Moreno administration?
I'll say this, you know, I've had a great experience working and dealing with the legislature as a former legislator. When I was a legislator, I served under Governor Bobby Jindal, and I was able to accomplish many things, including during that time, I took on the NRA and I won. So, you know, it's all about, you know, making sure that we are standing up for our city, but at the same time, figuring out what ways we can work with the state to get things done. So it's a balance. Look, I think it's very clear that myself and Governor Landry politically are very much in separate ways, right? But, you know, we need to figure out ways in which we can come together to advance the city and make sure that we create a city with the very most effective city services so that we increase the quality of life here.
What are you most proud of in your tenure as city council?
Oh, wow. In my tenure as city council, I mean, I think there's a lot of different things that I'm proud of, but I guess more than anything is there were some things that people said would never get done or really ever be accomplished. One of them is, solving the Gordon Plaza issue, and that was one of the things that I certainly leaned into and said that we could solve. I actually thought I was going to be able to get it solved in my first term, but we got a lot of pushback from the administration. Ultimately, we got that solved. That was a really big deal. Many administrations tried but hadn't been able to do so, and I was able to do that. Another piece, too, which I'm also very proud of, is after Hurricane Ida, I made a promise to the people of this city, and I said that I would do everything possible to strengthen the grid, the electric grid here in New Orleans, to make us more resilient and not put it all on the backs of ratepayers. One critic after the next said that that was going to be impossible, that hundreds of millions of dollars would be put on the backs of ratepayers, and I was able to find a way to ensure that didn't happen by getting in federal dollars and also by pushing on these specific lawsuits that we had against Entergy, and the amount of payments that the ratepayer ended up having to make was like $1. And so that's another thing that I'm also really proud of. So bottom line, it's just like leaning into those really hard issues that people didn't want to touch because they were just too difficult, that I said, no, let's go toward them. Let's go chip away at these problems and get them solved.
And just a quick follow-up.
Sure.
Kind of related to working with other branches of government and other levels of government, there's been a lot of friction recently between the council and mayor's office. How do you envision yourself, if you're elected mayor, working with the council?
So once again, it's all about like leaning in and listening and finding ways to work with others. Like I'm able to work with members of the legislature. I still go up there all the time with relationships I still have, Democrats or Republicans, and find a way to work with them. It's all about finding what each individual council member is passionate about and finding a way to advance what they are hoping to achieve. Because at the end of the day, if I'm able to achieve something good that a council member wants, ultimately, not only does it make us as a council and administration look good, at the end of the day, it makes the city look good. So I would be someone who, no doubt about it, would be leaning into working with the council, not thinking that the council's trying to one-up me, but it's about how do we find that partnership so we can advance the city together.
All right, folks, last question, then
Yeah.
Elena's got to go greet her guest.
Can you tell us, do you have a detailed plan, or how would you
Yeah.
solve some of these quality of life issues?
Great
Like
question.
homelessness, infrastructure, affordable housing?
Great
Pick one.
question, because that's how I was going to actually close this out. So I will be releasing a detailed plan on all of those issues, including how do we make New Orleans more affordable, coming up in the beginning part of the year. And so you'll be getting a lot more details in that plan coming out in 2025.
Do you have a particular one that you're most digging into?
So I will say this, I mean, honestly, public safety is one of the key things that we are looking into, and you're going to see some things in the plan that you've never seen before. It's not just about adding more police officers. Don't get me wrong, that is important, and I think we can move in a different direction when it comes to recruiting, because recruiting is currently failing. But there are some new things that you're going to see in my public safety plan that you probably never read before, but it's some things that other cities are doing that could take us in a positive direction. All right, guys.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Caroline.
And you tell